There are stories that grandmothers whisper when the moon is high and the fire is low. Stories that make children press closer to their mothers. Stories that make grown men check the locks on their doors twice before sleeping. This is one of those stories. In a forgotten corner of the forest, in a hut that even the bravest hunters avoided, there lived a man who looked no older than 30. His skin was smooth, unlined by time. His face was young, almost boyish. But if you looked into his eyes, those terrible ancient eyes, you would see something that would freeze the blood in your veins. Because this man was not 30 years old, he was 180, and he was dying, had been dying for 60 years. But death, merciful death, would not take him. Not yet. His name was Silas, and this is how his nightmare began. Many years ago, before mobile phones and internet, before even electricity reached most villages, Silas was born in a village so poor that even poverty looked down on it. His father was a farmer who wrestled with stubborn land that yielded more stones than yams. His mother sold firewood in the market, her back bent like a question mark from years of carrying heavy loads. From the time Silas could walk, he knew hunger. Not the kind of hunger that makes your stomach growl. No, the kind that hollows you out from the inside, that makes you dream of food even when you're awake, that turns your bones to water and your thoughts to mush. He watched his age mates, children from wealthier families, eat meat on days that weren't even special. He watched them wear clothes without patches, go to school with new books, laugh without worry, creasing their young faces. And something bitter took root in his heart. When Silas turned 15, his father called him. "My son," the old man said, his voice rough as dried corn husks. "I have nothing to give you, but I have arranged for you to go to the city, to serve a master, a trader. He will teach you business. If you work hard, if you are faithful, maybe, just maybe, when your time of service is done, he will settle you, give you capital to start your own trade." Silas looked around their compound, at the leaking roof, at his mother's worn wrapper, at his younger siblings with their swollen bellies and thin arms. "I will go," he said, and so he left. A boy of 15 with nothing but the clothes on his back and hunger, that terrible hunger, driving him forward. Master Okonkwo was a trader in building materials, cement, iron rods, roofing sheets. He sold them all. His shop was in the heart of the city, and money flowed through his hands like water. Silas served him for 7 years. 7 long years. He woke before the sun to sweep the shop. He carried bags of cement that weighed more than he did. He ran errands in the blazing heat and the pelting rain. He ate the leftovers from his master's table and slept on a mat in the back of the shop. But Silas was not lazy. No, he was sharp. He watched how Master Okonkwo negotiated with customers, how he calculated prices, how he sweet-talked contractors into buying from him instead of his competitors. Silas absorbed it all like dry ground drinking rain. "This boy," Master Okonkwo would tell his friends, "this boy has sense. When his time is complete, I will settle him well." Those words sustained Silas through the hard years, through the days when his back screamed from carrying heavy loads, through the nights when he was so tired he fell asleep mid-prayer. He told himself, "Just endure. Your time is coming. Soon you will be the master, not the servant." Finally, after 7 years of faithful service, Master Okonkwo called him. "Silas," he said, "you have served me well. You did not steal. You did not lie. You worked as if my business was your own business. I am impressed." Silas's heart began to race. "I am giving you your freedom," Master Okonkwo continued, "and I am settling you. I have rented a shop for you in the market. I have filled it with goods, iron rods, cement, paint, everything. I have even given you some of my contacts. Go, start your own business. Make me proud." Silas knelt and thanked his master until his knees hurt. That night he couldn't sleep. He lay on his mat, imagining his future. He would work hard. His business would prosper. He would build a house in the village. He would marry, have children. His children would never know hunger the way he knew it. Everything was going to change, or so he thought. But life, as Silas would soon learn, had other plans. The first week, Silas arranged his shop beautifully. He displayed his goods with care. He stood outside calling to potential customers with a bright voice. Nobody came. The second week, he lowered his prices. Surely customers would come now. His prices were better than his competitors. His goods were the same quality. Nobody came. By the third week, Silas was confused. He watched as customers walked past his shop, literally walked past, and entered the shops on either side of him. They bought from traders who charged more, traders whose goods were not even as well arranged as his. What was happening? A month passed, 2 months, 3. Silas had not made a single sale, not one. The only visitors to his shop were flies and cockroaches. He couldn't understand it. He had the goods. He had the contacts Master Okonkwo gave him. He had the knowledge. So why? Why was his shop as silent as a graveyard? Desperate, he reduced his prices even more. He practically begged people to come in and look. But it was as if his shop was invisible, as if some force was pushing customers away. The money Master Okonkwo had given him for feeding began to run out. Silas started skipping meals. One meal became one meal every 2 days. His clothes, which were already worn, became more ragged. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, he could see his fellow apprentices, boys who had served their masters the same time he did. He could see them thriving. Their shops were full of customers. They were buying cars, building houses, getting married, while he, Silas, sat in his empty shop, counting flies. The bitterness that had taken root in his heart years ago began to grow. Dark, thorny, choking out everything else. It was in his third year of suffering, 3 long years of failure and shame, that Silas met her. Her name was Ada. She sold vegetables in the market, tomatoes, peppers, onions, small things, but she was content. She had a smile that could light up a dark room and a voice soft as rainwater. Silas didn't know why she noticed him. He was thin as a broomstick. His shop was cursed, and he had nothing to offer. But Ada saw something in him. Maybe she saw past the hunger and the failure. Maybe she saw the boy who had served faithfully for 7 years, who still woke up every morning and opened his shop even when he knew no customer would come. They married quietly. No big ceremony, just a few witnesses and a short prayer. Ada moved into the tiny room behind Silas's shop, and she became his backbone. When Silas came home each evening, defeated and empty-handed, Ada would be there. She would have used the little money she made from selling vegetables to cook a small meal. She would listen to him vent his frustrations. She would wipe his tears when he broke down. "My husband," she would say gently, "be patient. God's time is the best. We are still young. We have time. Everything will turn around for good." But Silas was tired of being patient. As the years crawled by, they had two children together, a boy and a girl. Beautiful children. But Silas could barely feed them. Ada's small vegetable business was what kept them from starving. Can you imagine? A man, a grown man, being fed by his wife's petty trade? The shame ate at Silas like acid. He watched his age mates during village meetings. They came in flashy cars. They wore expensive clothes. They spoke loudly, and people listened. Meanwhile, Silas, his age mates made him wash plates after they finished eating. They sent him on errands like he was a houseboy. They laughed at him behind his back. "Poor Silas," they would say. "His master settled him well, but see how he has wasted it." Some people are just not destined for success. The humiliation was unbearable. One evening, after yet another terrible day at the shop, Silas made a decision. He would go back to Master Okonkwo. Maybe the old man would have advised. Maybe there was something, anything that could change his situation. Master Okonkwo looked older now when Silas visited him. His hair had grayed and his movements were slower, but his eyes were still sharp. He listened as Silas poured out his heart, how the business had failed, how customers avoided his shop like it carried a plague, how he couldn't feed his family. When Silas finished, Master Okonkwo was quiet for a long time. Then he smiled, a strange smile. "My boy," he said slowly, "did you think business was just about opening a shop and selling goods?" Silas frowned. "I don't understand, sir." "There is more to success than what the eye can see," Master Okonkwo continued. "There are things happening in the spiritual realm, forces, powers. Sometimes for business to flourish, certain sacrifices must be made." Silas felt something cold crawl up his spine. "What kind of sacrifices, sir?" Master Okonkwo leaned forward. "Can you pay the price for success? Can you do what it takes to be like your age mates? To be like me?" That night, Silas couldn't sleep. He thought about his starving children. He thought about Ada, working herself to the bone to feed the family. He thought about the mockery, the shame, the endless crushing poverty, and he made his decision. The next day, he went back to Master Okonkwo. "I'm ready," he said. "I will do whatever it takes." Master Okonkwo nodded slowly. "Good. But remember, what I'm about to show you, you must never tell anyone, not even your wife. This secret dies with you. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Then follow me." The native doctor lived deep in the forest. His hut was surrounded by strange-smelling smoke and dried animal skulls, hanging from tree branches like forgotten ornaments. When Silas entered, the man looked up. His eyes were like pools of black water, deep, dark, and knowing. "So," the native doctor said, even though no one had spoken, "you want wealth." It wasn't a question. Silas nodded, his mouth suddenly dry. "Wealth is easy to give," the native doctor continued. "But everything has a price you must be willing to pay." "I don't want blood sacrifice," Silas said quickly. "I won't bring any human being for you to kill." The native doctor laughed, a sound like dried leaves rustling. "Who said anything about that? I don't deal in such crude rituals. No, no. The sacrifice I require is much simpler." "What is it?" The native doctor studied him. You were supposed to live 80 years on this earth. You are 30 now. That gives you 50 years remaining. I will take 40 of those years. In exchange, I will give you wealth beyond your imagination. For 10 years, you will enjoy riches. Money will flow to you like water. Your name will be on everyone's lips. You will build empires. Silas's heart was pounding. And after 10 years, you die. The words hung in the air like smoke. 10 years, Silas whispered. Only 10 years? 10 years of wealth and glory, the native doctor corrected. Or 50 years of poverty and shame. Choose. Silas thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. What is the use of living long if you're suffering, he said. 10 years is enough for me to secure my family's future, to enjoy life, to leave a legacy. Do it. The native doctor smiled. For 3 days and 3 nights, Silas remained in that hut deep in the forest. Ada thought he had traveled to the village for some urgent family matter. She had no idea her husband was making a deal with forces that should never be disturbed. Rituals were performed. Incantations were chanted. Sacrifices were made. On the 3rd day, the native doctor gave Silas a small pouch filled with strange-smelling powder. Bury this in your shop, he said, at midnight, alone, and watch what happens. Silas did as he was told. The next morning, everything changed. The transformation was immediate and dramatic. The customer who walked into Silas's shop that morning was a contractor, a big man with a big contract. I need building materials, he said. A lot of them. Can you supply? Silas, still shocked that someone had actually entered the shop, stammered. Yes, sir. Of course. Good, here's the list. I'll pay up front. And just like that, Silas made his first sale. Not just any sale, a sale worth hundreds of thousands. By the end of the week, his shop was buzzing with customers. By the end of the month, he had to rent a warehouse. By the end of 6 months, he owned 3 shops. Money poured in like rain during the rainy season. Ada couldn't believe it. God has finally answered our prayers, she would say, tears of joy running down her face. Silas would smile and nod, but inside, he knew the truth. This wasn't God's work. Within 2 years, Silas was a millionaire. He bought cars. He built a mansion. He opened more businesses, a filling station, a supermarket, a hotel. He became a pillar in the community. People who used to mock him now bowed when they saw him. His age mates who made him wash plates now called him sir. He was living the dream. 5 years passed in a blur of success and celebration. Silas was now 35 years old, and one morning, he woke up with a start. 5 years. 5 years had passed, which meant he only had 5 years left to live. The realization hit him like a bucket of cold water. Suddenly, the mansion felt like a tomb. The cars felt like coffins on wheels. The money felt like paper. What good was all this wealth if he was going to die at 40? For the first time since making the deal, Silas felt afraid. The fear grew with each passing day. Silas couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every morning he woke up felt like one step closer to the grave. Every day that passed felt like a countdown to his death. He looked at Ada, still young and beautiful, her face glowing with the contentment that wealth had brought. He looked at his children, growing but still so small. Chidi was only 7, Amara just 5. He thought about leaving them behind. about everything he had built crumbling after he was gone, and he panicked. He went back to the native doctor who had given him the first ritual. "Wise one," he begged, falling to his knees at the entrance of the hut. "I was foolish. I didn't realize how fast time would pass. 10 years seemed like so long, but now I have only 5 years left. Please, is there any way to extend my life, even just a little?" The native doctor shook his head slowly. "You made a deal with nature. You bought wealth with your years. It cannot be reversed. Nature does not negotiate twice." Silas fell to his knees. "Please, there must be something, anything." "There is nothing I can do," the native doctor said firmly. "When your time is up, you will die. This is the price you agreed to pay. Agreement is agreement." For months after that visit, Silas was depressed. Ada asked him what was wrong, but he couldn't tell her. How could he explain that he had sold half his life for money, that in less than 5 years he would be dead? He started drinking heavily, started snapping at his children for no reason. The joy of wealth had turned to ash in his mouth. Then, one day, during a business trip to a distant city, he overheard some men talking in hushed voices at a bar. "If you have a problem that cannot be solved," one man said, "go to the village of Amugo. There is a native doctor there. They say he is the most powerful in all the land. He deals in special rituals, dark rituals, but he can do anything, reverse any curse, break any spell." Silas's ears perked up. "But be warned," another man added, his voice dropping even lower. "He does not work with animal blood. He works with human blood. Many people who have gone to him, they say he has done terrible things." Silas didn't care. He told Ada he was going on a business trip and traveled to the remote village of Amugo. The hut was isolated, dark. The air around it felt heavy, wrong, like the very atmosphere was diseased. When Silas entered, the native doctor looked up. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept in years, or like he had seen things no human should see. "I know why you are here," the native doctor said before Silas could speak. "You made a deal. You traded years for wealth. Now you want more time." "Yes," Silas whispered. "Please, I have money. I'll pay anything." The native doctor laughed, a sound that made Silas's skin crawl. "I can help you," he said. "But the price is steep, very steep. I don't think you can pay it." "I'll pay anything," Silas insisted. "Anything." The native doctor leaned forward, his red eyes gleaming in the dim light of the hut. "You traded years for wealth. Now to gain more years, you must trade something else." "What?" "Life." Silas frowned. "I don't understand." "You need to buy back the years you lost and add even more. To do that, you must take life from others, close to you, very close to you." A terrible understanding began to dawn on Silas. His blood ran cold. "No," he whispered. "Your wife," the native doctor said calmly, as if discussing the weather, "and your 2 children. Sacrifice them. Take their remaining years and add them to your own. You are 35 now. Your wife is 32. If she was meant to live to 70, that's 38 years. Your son is 7. If he was meant to live to 80, that's 73 years. Your daughter is 5. 75 years. The native doctor smiled, showing teeth that seemed too sharp. "That's 186 years total. Add them to your remaining 5 years. You live to be 226 years old. Plenty of time to enjoy your wealth. plenty of time to remarry, have new children, build an empire. Silas felt like he was going to vomit. I I can't. They're my family. My wife has been good to me, stood by me through the hungry years. My children are innocent. Then go home and die in 5 years, the native doctor said with a shrug. Leave all your wealth behind. Let your competitors laugh at your grave. Let your children grow up as orphans. Struggling the way you struggled, the choice is yours. Silas turned to leave, but he stopped at the door. He thought about death, about leaving his wealth behind, about becoming nothing but a memory, about Ada remarrying some other man who would enjoy the empire Silas had built, and the darkness in his heart, that bitter, hungry darkness that had been there since childhood, that had driven him to the first native doctor, whispered, "Do it." He turned back slowly. If if I do this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I can still remarry, right? Have more children?" "Of course," the native doctor said. "You'll be young and rich for many, many years. You can have 10 wives if you want, 20 children. Your life will be long and prosperous." Silas took a deep breath, and he agreed to murder his family. The ritual took 3 days and 3 nights in that terrible hut in Amugo village. The native doctor summoned the spirits of Ada, young Chidi, and little Amara into a calabash, a ritual gourd carved with symbols that seemed to move in the firelight. He chanted in languages that predated human civilization. He made cuts on Silas's arms and collected his blood, mixing it with foul-smelling substances. Their souls were trapped, their fates were sealed. When Silas returned home on the 4th day, they were still alive, walking, talking, laughing, but they were already dead. The ritual had been completed. They were just corpses that hadn't stopped breathing yet. That evening, Silas looked at his family, really looked at them. Ada was preparing dinner, humming softly, a song from her village that she always sang when she was happy. She had stood by him through the hungry years, never complained, never left. Even when he had nothing to offer, she had stayed. Chidi was doing his homework at the dining table, tongue sticking out in concentration, the way children do when they're focused. Amara was playing with a doll Ada had sewn from old cloth, making the doll dance and sing. His children, his wife, and he was going to kill them for a moment, just a moment. Silas almost called the whole thing off, almost ran back to Amugo to beg the native doctor to reverse the ritual. But then he remembered the poverty, the shame, the mockery, the years of hunger, and now the thought of losing everything he had gained, of dying at 40 and leaving it all behind. No, he had come too far to turn back now. After dinner, he kissed Amara's forehead, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair, helped Chidi with his homework, ruffling the boy's head, hugged Ada, holding her close for just a moment longer than usual. One last time. Then he told Ada he had a business meeting, an urgent one. "This late?" Ada asked, looking up from the dishes she was washing, concern creasing her forehead. "Yes, a client from the United States just landed at the airport. He wants to see me at a hotel to discuss a major contract. If I don't close this deal tonight, my competitors will take it. You know how business is." Ada nodded. She trusted him. She always had. "Okay, my husband. Go safely. We'll be waiting for you." Before Silas left, he went to the kitchen. Ada was in the living room now, helping Amara get ready for bed. The kitchen was empty. and he turned on the gas cooker, but he didn't light it. He left the gas running, the invisible poison filling the air. He knew Ada's routine. Every morning at 5 a.m., like clockwork, she would come downstairs to make her early morning tea before preparing breakfast. She would walk into the kitchen, still half asleep, and try to light the stove to boil water, and the house would explode. Silas also quietly locked the front door from the outside as he left, pocketing the spare key. The windows were already barred. He had installed iron bars himself, claiming it was for security. There would be no escape. Then he drove to a hotel across town, checked into a room, and waited. He drank whiskey that night, bottle after bottle, trying to drown his conscience, trying to silence the voice in his head that screamed he was a monster. At 5:30 a.m., his phone rang. It was a neighbor, her voice hysterical. "Olga Silas, Olga Silas, come quick, your house. There's been a terrible accident. Fire, explosion, your wife and children." Silas pretended to be shocked. He screamed into the phone. He cried. He rushed to his car and drove home, though he already knew exactly what he would find. By the time he arrived, the mansion was a smoking ruin. The explosion had been so intense, so sudden, that the fire brigade said no one inside could have survived. The heat had been too great, the flames too fast. Ida, Chidi, Amara burnt beyond recognition. Silas put on the performance of his life. He collapsed on the ground in front of the gathered crowd. He wailed. He tore at his clothes. He rolled in the dirt. "Why?" he screamed to the sky, his voice raw. "Why did I leave the house? I should have stayed. God, why did you take them? Why not me? This is my fault." Neighbors gathered around him, consoled him. Women cried with him. Men placed comforting hands on his shoulders. It was an accident, Olga Silas. A terrible accident. The gas. It must have leaked during the night. These things happen. It's not your fault. But deep inside, behind the tears and the screaming, Silas felt nothing, just a cold, satisfied darkness. The sacrifice was complete. The funeral was the talk of the town for months. Silas spared no expense. 3 caskets, the best money could buy, though there was barely anything left of the bodies to bury. A lavish ceremony with food and drinks for hundreds of mourners. A famous pastor flown in from Lagos to preach the sermon. Everyone who was anyone attended. Business partners, politicians, society people. They all came to console the bereaved husband and father. Silas played his part perfectly. The devastated widower, the broken father. He wore black for months. He wept at the graves. He commissioned a beautiful monument with their names carved in marble. After 6 months of mourning, Silas quietly moved to another part of town, a bigger mansion, a fresh start, away from the memories he claimed. Within a year, he remarried. A young, beautiful woman named Ngozi, who was dazzled by his wealth and status. She was only 23. Silas was now 36. Still young, still handsome, still full of life. Ngozi didn't ask too many questions about his first family. The topic made him too emotional, so she learned not to bring it up. Besides, Silas was a good catch, rich, successful, generous. They had children together, 4 of them over the next few years, 2 boys and 2 girls. And Silas's businesses continued to boom. Everything he touched turned to gold. He became even wealthier. He expanded his empire, bought more properties, opened more companies. Life was good. Life was perfect. The years passed quickly. 37, 38, 39, and then came the year Silas had been dreading. He turned 40. The morning of his 40th birthday, Silas woke up and lay in bed for a long moment, just breathing. He was alive. He was supposed to be dead. According to the first ritual, today was the day he should have dropped dead. 10 years from 30. This was it. But he was breathing. His heart was beating. He could move his fingers, his toes. He was alive. A grin spread across his face. Then a laugh. A deep, triumphant laugh. He had done it. He had cheated death. The second ritual had worked. He had bought more time, so much more time, and he was going to enjoy every second of it. Ngozi, he called out, jumping out of bed with the energy of a teenager. Ngozi, wake up! His wife stared, confused. What is it? What's wrong? Nothing is wrong, Silas said, pulling her up. Everything is right. Today is my birthday. I'm 40, and we're going to celebrate like never before. Ngozi smiled, still sleepy, but happy to see her husband so excited. Of course, my husband. How do you want to celebrate? Big, Silas declared. I want to throw the biggest party the city has ever seen. And he did. Silas rented out the most expensive event center in the city. He hired the best caterers, the best musicians, the best entertainers. He invited everyone, business associates, politicians, society people, neighbors, even casual acquaintances. The party was legendary. There was enough food to feed a small army. The drinks flowed like rivers. A famous musician performed live. There were dancers, acrobats, comedians. Silas wore the finest suit money could buy. He danced. He laughed. He gave speeches thanking God for his life, for his success, for his beautiful wife and children. People whispered among themselves, Oga Silas is really happy today. Well, why not? 40 years is a milestone, and look at all he's achieved. The man is truly blessed. If only they knew. If only they knew that Silas wasn't celebrating turning 40. He was celebrating not dying at 40. He was celebrating getting away with murder. He was celebrating cheating fate itself. That night, after all the guests had left and the event center was being cleaned up, Silas stood alone on the balcony of his mansion, looking out at the city lights. He felt invincible. He had conquered his greatest fear. Death had come knocking, and he had slammed the door in its face. Now he had time. So much time. 186 years to be exact. What couldn't he achieve with that kind of time? I'm going to build an empire, he whispered to himself, the likes of which this country has never seen. My name will be remembered for generations. He had no idea how right he was. His name would indeed be remembered, but not for the reasons he thought. Life continued beautifully for Silas over the next few years. His businesses expanded across the country. He became a household name. His second family grew. His children with Ngozi were thriving, attending the best schools, wanting for nothing. Silas himself remained young and energetic. At 42, at 45, at 48, he still looked and felt like he was in his 30s. The second ritual had not only extended his life, it had locked his body in perpetual youth. He was living the dream. Then, one December morning, news came from his home village that changed everything. The king was dead. The king of Silas's village, The same village he had left as a hungry 15-year-old boy had died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 92. He had been a good king, a just king, a man who ruled with wisdom for over 30 years. The entire village mourned. Silas, being a prominent son of the soil, was expected to attend the funeral. He traveled back to the village with Ngozi and his children, bringing generous donations for the burial ceremonies. The funeral was elaborate. The whole village gathered. The king was given a royal burial befitting his station. But as they laid the old king to rest, a new question arose. Who would be the next king? According to tradition, the throne did not pass from father to son. Instead, it rotated among the royal families of the village. And the next family in line, everyone knew, was the Okeke family. Specifically, it should go to a man named Okeke, a simple farmer, a humble man who owned a small plot of land where he grew yams and cassava to feed his wife and children. Okeke was 55 years old. He was a good man, honest, hardworking, but he was poor, very poor. He had no wealth, no connections, no influence beyond his small farm. The council of elders gathered to discuss the succession. Now, these elders, the men who were supposed to uphold tradition and ensure a smooth transition, they were not like the righteous elders of old. No, these particular elders had grown comfortable over the years, very comfortable. And much of that comfort had come from Silas. You see, even though Silas had moved to the city decades ago, he had never forgotten his village. Every Christmas, every New Year, he would return with bags of money, fat envelopes for the elders, gifts for the chiefs, sponsorship for village events. He had even built a magnificent town hall with his name carved in gold letters above the entrance. The elders loved him, worshipped him even, because Silas kept their pockets full, their bellies round, their children in good schools, on Silas's scholarships, of course. So when the king died and the question of succession arose, these elders had a problem and an opportunity. It started with quiet conversations, hushed meetings in the dead of night, the elders gathering in each other's compounds, speaking in low voices, making plans. Chief Okafor, the oldest and most influential among them, was the first to voice what they were all thinking. My brothers, he said at one such meeting, we have a situation. According to tradition, Okike is next in line for the throne. Okeke the farmer, Chief Emeka scoffed. He was a fat man who had grown even fatter on Silas's generosity over the years. That poor man, what will he do for us? Exactly, another elder chimed in. Okeke has nothing, no money, no connections. If we make him king, what do we gain? What does the village gain? The village needs development, Chief Okafor continued, his voice taking on a persuasive tone. We need electricity, good roads, a health center. These things require money, serious money, and connections with people in government. Okeke cannot provide any of that, Chief Emeka added. He can barely feed his own family. How will he develop the village? The room fell silent as the elders considered this. Then Chief Okafor spoke again, this time with a smile. But what if? What if we had a king who could actually transform this village? A man of means, a man of influence, a man who has already shown his love for the village through his generosity. They all knew exactly who he was talking about. Silas, someone whispered. Yes, Silas, Chief Okafor said louder now. Think about it, my brothers. Silas is from this village. His father was born here. His grandfather was born here. He has the bloodline. And more importantly, he has everything we need. Money, connections. He knows governors, senators, business tycoons. If we make Silas king, this village will transform. The elders nodded eagerly, their minds already calculating the benefits. More money, more gifts, more prestige. But one younger elder, Chief Namdi, raised a cautious voice. But tradition says Okeke is next in line. Can we just ignore tradition? Chief Okafor slammed his walking stick on the ground. Tradition is a guide, not a prison, my son. Tradition must serve the people, not enslave them. What is the use of following tradition if it leads us to poverty? If it gives us a king who cannot help the village? But won't people question this? Chief Namdi pressed. Won't Okiki's family protest? Won't the other villagers say we have broken with custom? Chief Emeka leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with cunning. Leave Okeke to us, he said quietly. There are ways to handle such obstacles. What matters is that we present a united front. If all the elders agree that Silas is the best choice, who can argue with us? The meeting continued deep into the night, and by the time it ended, the decision had been made. They would approach Silas. They would offer him the throne. And Okeke, well, Okeke would have to be dealt with. 3 days later, a delegation of elders visited Silas at his mansion in the city. He received them warmly, as he always did, served them drinks and food, asked about the village, about their families. Then Chief Okafor got to the point. Oga Silas, he began, his voice respectful but urgent. We have come with a proposal, a great honor for you and for the village. Silas raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. As you know, our king has joined his ancestors. May his soul rest in peace. May he rest in peace, Silas echoed. The village needs a new king, Chief Okafor continued. And we, the Council of Elders, have deliberated extensively on who would be best suited to lead our people into the future. Silas was beginning to understand where this was going, and his heart started to beat faster. We want you, Oga Silas, Chief Emeka said, unable to contain himself. We want you to be our next king. Silas sat back in his chair, genuinely surprised. Me? King? But I don't even live in the village anymore. I've been in the city for decades. That doesn't matter, Chief Okafor assured him. A king doesn't have to live in the village every day. You can visit during important festivals and events. The rest of the time, we will manage things on your behalf, but we need your influence, your resources, your connections. Chief Emeka leaned forward eagerly. Think of what you could do for the village, Oga Silas. You could bring electricity, something we've been waiting for years. You could build good roads, a hospital, a secondary school. You know people in government. You can get things done that a poor man like Okeke could never accomplish. At the mention of Okeke's name, Silas paused. What about Okeke? I heard he's next in line according to tradition. The elders exchanged glances. Tradition is flexible, Chief Okafor said smoothly. What matters most is what's best for the village. And we, as the custodians of tradition, have determined that you are what's best. Okeke is a good man, Another elder added, but he has nothing to offer. He's just a poor farmer. What kind of king would he make? They continued to sell the idea to Silas, painting pictures of the great things he could do as king, the legacy he would leave, the honor it would bring to his name and his children's names. And Silas listened. Part of him knew this wasn't right. He knew Okeke was supposed to be next in line. He knew the elders were corrupt, motivated by greed and self-interest. But another part of him, that dark, ambitious part that had driven him to sacrifice his own family, that part whispered, why not? You deserve this. You've achieved everything else. Why not be king too? Why not have real power, political power? Why should some poor farmer take what you could use so much better? Let me think about it, Silas finally said. The elders smiled. They knew that tone. They knew he was already convinced. Take your time, Oga Silas, Chief Okafor said, standing to leave. But not too much time. The village needs a king, and we need your answer soon. After they left, Silas sat alone in his study, contemplating. King Silas. It had a nice ring to it. He was already wealthy beyond measure, already influential. But this would be different. This would be legacy. Power of a different kind. His name would be in the history books. His great-great-grandchildren would speak of him with pride. King Silas the First. Yes, he wanted it. But there was still the problem of Okike. 2 days later, Silas called Chief Okafor on the phone. I've made my decision, he said. I'll accept. I'll be king. There was celebration on the other end of the line. Wonderful, Oga Silas. Wonderful, this is great news for the village. But, Silas said carefully, what about Okeke? He's not going to just step aside quietly. His family will protest. People will talk. There was a pause. Then Chief Okafor's voice came back. Lower now, more careful. Oga Silas, in life, sometimes obstacles must be removed for progress to happen. Do you understand what I'm saying? Silas understood perfectly. Are you asking me to? I'm not asking you anything, Chief Okafor interrupted quickly. I'm simply saying that if certain complications were to disappear, the path would be clear. Tradition could be interpreted favorably. The village would have its king. Everyone would be happy. Except Okike, Silas said. Well, Chief Okafor's voice took on a harder edge. Not everyone can be satisfied. Progress requires sacrifice, doesn't it? You of all people should understand that. Silas sat in silence, processing what was being suggested. They wanted him to eliminate Okeke. A normal person, a good person, would have been horrified, would have refused immediately, would have told the elders they were evil and walked away from the whole thing. But Silas had already murdered his own wife and children. What was one more body? What was one stranger compared to that? And besides, he reasoned to himself, it wasn't like he would be killing Okeke personally. He would just arrange things, make a few calls, hire the right people. His hands would stay clean. I'll take care of it. Silas heard himself saying, Excellent, Chief Okafor said, satisfaction evident in his voice. I knew we could count on you. Once the path is clear, we'll begin the coronation process immediately. After hanging up, Silas sat in his study for a long time. He thought about the boy he used to be, the hungry, hopeful boy who just wanted a chance at a better life. When had he become this? A monster who murdered without hesitation, who saw human lives as obstacles to be removed. But then he looked around his mansion, at his wealth, at the life he had built, and he pushed those uncomfortable thoughts away. He was too far in now. There was no going back. He had already sold his soul. Might as well get everything he could for it. The next day, Silas made some calls, spoke to some people who specialized in making problems disappear, gave them a name and a location, Okeke, the poor farmer who stood between Silas and the crown. Okeke had no idea he was a market man. He woke up that morning like any other morning, kissed his wife goodbye, told his 25-year-old son, Okeke Jr., that he would be back by evening. "Be careful on the road, Papa," Okeke Jr. said. He had been feeling uneasy lately. The elders had been acting strange, asking his father odd questions about whether he wanted to be king, whether he was prepared for the responsibility. Something felt wrong, but Okeke Jr. couldn't quite put his finger on what. "I will, my son," the older Okeke said with a smile. "Don't worry, it's just another day at the farm." But it wasn't just another day. Okeke left his compound with his farming tools, a hoe, a machete, a small bag of seeds. The path to his farm led through a stretch of forest. It was a path he had walked thousands of times. He never made it to his farm. 3 men were waiting for him at a bend in the path. Men he had never seen before. Men with hard eyes and harder hearts. Men who had been paid well to do a job. "Are you Okeke?" one of them asked, though they already knew the answer. "Yes, I am Okeke. Do I know you?" "No," the man said, pulling out a heavy stone. "But someone wants to make sure you never become king." Okeke's eyes widened. Wait, please. I don't even want to be." The stone came down again and again. By the time they were done, Okeke was unrecognizable. They took his money, the small amount he had in his pocket, to make it look like a robbery. They scattered his farming tools. Then they disappeared into the forest like shadows. When Okeke didn't return by evening, his family became worried. By nightfall, they organized a search party. They found his body the next morning, lying at the edge of the forest, his head crushed, his pockets empty. The village was shocked, horrified. Poor Okeke, such a good man, who would do such a thing? It must have been robbers, people said. Bandits from outside the village. These are terrible times we're living in. The elders organized a quick burial. They contributed money for the funeral. Guilty money, blood money, though no one knew it. And Silas? Silas attended the funeral, of course. He stood among the mourners, his face appropriately solemn. He even contributed generously toward the burial expenses. "Such a tragedy," he said to anyone who would listen. "Okeke was a good man. The village has lost a son." Inside, he felt nothing, just cold satisfaction that the obstacle had been removed. But there was one person who wasn't fooled. Okeke Jr. Okeke Jr. stood at his father's grave. His fists clenched so tight, his nails drew blood from his palms. He knew, somehow in his heart, in his gut, he knew this was no random robbery. His father had told him just days before, "The elders have been acting strange, son, asking me questions. I think something is wrong. I think they don't want me to be king." And now his father was dead. But Okeke Jr. was just a poor farmer's son. He had no proof, no power, no money. Who would believe him if he pointed fingers at the great Silas, at the respected council of elders? he would be dismissed. Or worse, he might end up like his father. The night after the funeral, strange men started appearing near their compound. Men who leaned against trees, watching. Men who asked neighbors pointed questions about Okeke's family. Where is the son? Does he have plans to claim the throne? Does he talk about what happened to his father? Okike Jr.'s mother noticed too. She was terrified. "My son," she whispered to him one night, her voice shaking. "We are not safe here. I think, I think they want to kill you too, to wipe out our entire family so no one can question what they're doing." Okike Jr. wanted to fight, wanted to demand justice, but he looked at his mother's frightened face. He thought about his young wife and their infant son, and he made a decision. They would run. In the middle of the night, while the village slept, Okeke Jr. gathered his family. They packed only what they could carry: some clothes, a little money, a few precious items. They left everything else: the compound, the land, the farm, their entire history. "Where will we go?" his wife asked, tears streaming down her face. "To the city," Okeke Jr. said grimly. "We'll disappear, change our names, start over. It's the only way to keep our son safe." So they fled, like criminals, though they had committed no crime, like refugees, though it was their own village they were running from. They traveled through the night, looking over their shoulders, jumping at every sound. By morning, they were gone. The village woke to find Okeke's compound empty, abandoned. The elders smiled when they heard the news. "See," Chief Emeka said to the others, "the son has run away, abandoned his father's legacy like a coward. This proves that family was never fit to rule." "The path is clear now," Chief Okafor declared. "There is no one left to challenge Silas's claim to the throne." And just like that, as if Okike had never existed, as if his murder had never happened, the village moved on. 3 months after Okike's death, the Council of Elders made their official announcement. After much deliberation and prayer, they declared the next king of the village would be Silas. There were some whispers, a few murmurs of protest. Some older villagers who remember tradition said this wasn't right, that Okeke's family should have been considered, but the elders shut down any dissent quickly. "Okeke is dead," they said. "May his soul rest in peace. And his son, he has abandoned the village, run away like a coward. How can we crown a family that won't even stay to lead us? Silas is here. Silas is willing. Silas has already shown his love for the village through his generosity. He has built roads, built the town hall, sent children to school. He is clearly the best choice." And really, most villagers couldn't argue with that logic. Silas had been good to the village. He was successful, rich, influential. Maybe the elders were right. Maybe this was progress, not tradition breaking. The coronation was set for 3 months later, giving time for preparations. And what preparations they were! Silas spared no expense. He wanted his coronation to be remembered for generations. He hired the best event planners. He flew in people from all over the country. He arranged for television coverage. He invited governors, senators, business moguls, celebrities. The village had never seen anything like it. On the day of the coronation, the entire village was transformed. Decorations everywhere, stages set up, security everywhere. It looked less like a village and more like a city. hosting a presidential inauguration. Thousands of people attended. They came from neighboring villages, from nearby towns, from the cities. They came to witness history. Silas arrived in a convoy of luxury cars. He was dressed in the finest traditional attire money could buy. Rich fabrics, gold accessories, a regal bearing. At 48 years old, he still looked like a man in his early 30s. Youthful, vibrant, strong. The coronation ceremony itself was spectacular. Traditional rites were performed. Prayers were offered. The village priest, who had also been well compensated over the years, blessed Silas and declared him chosen by the ancestors. The ancestors, if they were watching, must have wept. The crown, a beautiful traditional crown that had been worn by kings for generations, was placed on Silas's head. I present to you, Chief Okafor declared to the massive crowd, King Silas the First. May his reign be long and prosperous. The crowd erupted in cheers. Music played. Dancers performed. Food and drinks flowed like rivers. Silas sat on his throne, a new throne, built specially for him, more grand and elaborate than any that had come before. And he smiled. He had done it. He was king, not just a rich man, not just a business tycoon, but a king, royalty. His name would go down in the history books. His children and grandchildren would inherit this legacy. For the first few years of his reign, everything seemed perfect. Silas was a generous king. He used his wealth to develop the village. He finally brought electricity. The village lit up at night for the first time in its history, and people wept with joy. He built a health center. He tarred some of the main roads. He sponsored talented village youths to attend university. The council of elders grew even fatter. Silas made sure their pockets stayed full. Monthly allowances, festival bonuses, gifts for their children. They praised him at every gathering. King Silas is the best thing to happen to this village, they would declare. Look at the development. Look at the progress. Even the village priest, who should have been a man of God, accepted Silas's money and looked the other way whenever there were uncomfortable questions about how Okeke had died or why his family had fled. Money, as they say, has a way of making people forget inconvenient truths. But then, as the years continued to pass, something became impossible to ignore. Something that would eventually unravel everything Silas had built. King Silas never aged. At first, it was barely noticeable. 5 years into his reign, Silas was 53 years old, but he still looked like he was in his early 30s. People remarked on it, of course. "Ah, Igwe, you look so young. What is your secret?" Silas would laugh and give the same answer he'd been giving for years. "Good genes, and I take care of myself. Exercise, diet. You know, I also use some special treatments from Korea. Anti-aging therapies. Very expensive, but worth it." People would nod and accept the explanation. Rich people had access to things ordinary people didn't. Who were they to question? 10 years into his reign, Silas was now 58 years old, but he still looked 30, not 35, not even 33. 30. Not a single gray hair had appeared on his head, not a single wrinkle on his face. His skin was smooth. His movements were energetic, athletic even. His second wife, Ngozi, was now 43, beginning to show her age, as people naturally do. But Silas, he looked younger than some of his own children. People started to talk. There's something strange about the king. It's not natural. A man his age should have some gray hair at least. Do you think he's using juju? But the whispers were quiet. Silas was still generous, still providing for the village, and people were afraid to speak too loudly against a king who had so much power and money. 15 years into his reign, Silas was 63 years old. The council of elders who had crowned him, those corrupt old men who had helped him steal the throne, they were beginning to die off. Chief Okafor died at 81. They gave him a grand burial, and Silas contributed generously to the funeral. Chief Emeka died at 77. His body finally giving out after years of overeating on Silas's money. One by one, those original elders went to their graves, but Silas remained unchanged, unaged. At the funerals, people couldn't help but notice. The elders they were burying looked ancient, but the king who had been crowned alongside them, looked exactly the same as he had 15 years ago. It was unnerving. 20 years into his reign, Silas was 68 years old but looked 30. His children from his second marriage with Ngozi were now grown adults. His eldest son was 32. His daughter was 28. They looked older than their father. At village gatherings, when Silas's children came to pay their respects, the sight was disturbing. Middle-aged men and women, some with gray hairs of their own beginning to show, bowing before a father who looked like their younger brother. The whispers were no longer quiet. This is not normal. There's something evil about the king. He must have done something, some terrible ritual. Why else would a man his age look like a boy? But still, no one dared confront him directly. Silas was too powerful, too wealthy, and he still made sure to distribute money during festivals, to sponsor village events, to maintain his image as a benevolent king. 25 years into his reign, Silas was 73 years old. Ngozi, his second wife, was now 63. She had grown old beside a husband who never aged. In her last years, her hair was completely gray. Her face was lined with wrinkles. Her back was beginning to stoop. While Silas, still 30, still vibrant, still looking like he could run a marathon. The contrast was obscene. People stared at them when they appeared together, whispered behind their hands. Some even had the audacity to ask Ngozi, "Sister, is that your son?" when they saw her walking with Silas. The humiliation tortured Ngozi, the stares, the whispers, the rumors that her husband was not human, that he had made dark pacts. She became a recluse, stayed in the palace, stopped attending public events. When she finally died at 75, of what doctors called natural causes, but what everyone knew was a broken spirit, the whole village breathed a sigh of relief for her. She suffered, they said. Living with that man, that thing, she's better off with the ancestors now. Silas buried her with great ceremony, of course, wept publicly, wore black for months, but inside, he felt nothing. Ngozi had just been another piece in his game, another person he had used and discarded. Now he was 75 years old, still looking 30, still king. His children from his second marriage, some of them had died already, of old age. Their father outlived them. Can you imagine burying your own children, not because they died young, but because they grew old and died while you stayed young? It was against nature, against God, against everything holy. The new generation of villagers, people who hadn't been alive when Silas was crowned, they looked at him with fear, with disgust. He was no longer seen as a benevolent king. He was seen as a curse, an abomination, something evil that had somehow attached itself to the village. The palace, which had once been full of life and activity, became quiet. Servants resigned. Guards stopped showing up. Even the new council of elders, sons and grandsons of those who had crowned Silas, they started avoiding the palace unless absolutely necessary. But Silas was still king, still wealthy, still technically in power until the sickness came. It started when Silas was 105 years old, though he still looked 30. One morning, he woke up feeling strange. His skin felt tight, wrong, like it didn't quite fit his body anymore. He looked in the mirror. Everything seemed normal. Same youthful face, same smooth skin, but something was off. He could feel it. By evening, the itching started. It was unbearable, like thousands of tiny ants crawling under his skin, eating him from the inside. He scratched until he bled, but the itching wouldn't stop. He called the best doctors in the country. They came. They examined him. They ran every test imaginable. "Your vitals are perfect, Your Majesty," one confused doctor said. "Your blood work is that of a 30-year-old. I can't find anything wrong, but something was very wrong." Within a week, his skin began to peel, coming off in sheets like a snake shedding its skin, raw, bleeding flesh underneath. But the skin that grew back, still young, still smooth. Then his teeth began to fall out. One by one, they just became loose and dropped out of his mouth. His hair fell out in clumps. His nails turned black and fell off. But his face, his cursed, unchanging face, remained young. He was a young man decomposing. The pain was excruciating. Imagine feeling like you're on fire 24 hours a day. Imagine itching so badly you want to tear your own skin off. Imagine not being able to eat, to sleep, to find even a moment's peace. That was Silas's life now. He called for native doctors from all over the country. They came. They looked. Most ran away, terrified. One old native doctor, a woman so ancient she looked like she might crumble to dust. She looked at Silas and laughed, a terrible knowing laugh. "You killed your family," she said simply. "Your first wife, your first children. You took their lives and added them to yours. Now the spirits of those you murdered are eating you alive, but they won't let you die. Oh no, you wanted to live long. Now you live long. You suffer for every single year you stole." "Can you stop it?" Silas begged. "Can you reverse it?" The old woman shook her head. "Some sins are too great. You must drink the cup you poured for yourself, every drop, to the bitter end." And she left. Silas tried everything. He called more native doctors, performed more rituals, sacrificed more animals, spent millions trying to find a cure. Nothing worked. The sickness defied every medical explanation, every spiritual intervention, because it wasn't a sickness, it was judgment. While Silas suffered in his decaying palace, a new generation was rising in the village. These were the sons and grandsons of the corrupt elders who had crowned Silas. But unlike their fathers, many of them had gone to school, had been to universities, had learned about justice, integrity, righteousness. They weren't impressed by money the way their fathers had been. One of them was a young man named Chukudi. He was Chief Emeka's grandson. a lawyer who worked in the city. When Chief Emeka died, Chukwudi had inherited his grandfather's position on the Council of Elders, and with it, he inherited his grandfather's papers and belongings. One day, while going through his late grandfather's things, Chukwudi found a diary, and what he read made his blood run cold. Received 5 million from Silas today. He wants to be king. We have agreed. Spoke to Silas about the Okeke problem. He assures me it will be handled. Okeke is dead. Found on the farm road. They say it was robbers, but we know better. The path is clear now. Silas's coronation is set. We will all be rich men. Page after page, entry after entry, a complete record of the conspiracy, the bribery, the murder plot. Chukwudi felt sick. His grandfather, the man he had loved and respected, had been part of a murder, had helped a killer steal the throne. He didn't keep it to himself. He called a secret meeting with other young members of the council. He showed them the diary. The reactions were mixed. Some were horrified. Some were defensive. Our fathers did what they thought was best, one argued. Best for whom? Chukwudi shot back. Best for themselves. They took blood money. They helped cover up a murder. What can we do about it now? Another asked. It was so long ago. Everyone involved is dead. Except Silas, Chukwudi said quietly. Silas is still alive, still on the throne, a throne he stole through murder. And Okeke's family? Another young elder named Ifeanyi asked. What happened to them? They began to investigate. Quietly, carefully. They spoke to old villagers who remembered. They dug through old records. Piece by piece, they uncovered the truth. Okeke had been the rightful heir. He had been murdered, not by random bandits, but on Silas's orders. His son, Okeke Jr., had fled the village with his family, terrified for their lives. We have to make this right, Chukwudi declared. Our fathers did a terrible wrong. We must correct it. But how? Ifeanyi asked. Silas is still king, and Okeke is long dead. Okeke had a son, Chukwudi said. Okeke Jr. If we can find him or his descendants, we can restore the rightful family to the throne. After all these years, someone asked skeptically, how would we even find them? But Chukwudi was determined. We are educated. We have resources. We can do this. We have to do this. And so they began their search. It took months, but finally, through patient investigation and old records, they found a lead. Okeke Jr. had died 5 years ago at the age of 81. He had spent his life in the city, working as a security guard, never telling anyone about his royal heritage. But he had left a son, Chinedu, age 33, a civil servant working in Lagos, the rightful heir. Part 22. The Return. When Chukwudi and his delegation found Chinedu in Lagos, the young man didn't believe them at first. My grandfather was supposed to be a king, he said incredulous. That's impossible. My father never mentioned anything like that. We were just simple people. But Chukwudi showed him everything. The diary entries, the testimonies from old villagers who remembered, documents proving the lineage. Your grandfather was murdered, Chukwudi explained gently, by a man named Silas, who wanted the throne for himself. Your father fled to save your life, to save his family, but now we want to make things right. Chinedu was quiet for a long time. He thought about his father. A quiet man who had worked hard his whole life, who had seemed to carry some deep sadness he never spoke about. This Silas, Chinedu finally said. Is he still alive? Chukwudi's face darkened. He is. And that's the strangest part. He told Chinedu everything about Silas's impossible age, about how he looked 30 but had been king for over 50 years, about the sickness that was destroying him but wouldn't kill him. The whole village believes he made pacts with dark forces, Chukwudi said. And now those forces are punishing him. He lies in the palace, rotting but not dying. It's terrible to see. Chinedu felt a chill run down his spine. Please, Chukwudi pleaded. Come back to the village. Take your rightful place. Help us cleanse the land of this evil. Your grandfather's spirit deserves justice. Your father's spirit deserves peace. Chinedu didn't want to. He had a good job, a peaceful life. He wanted nothing to do with village politics or cursed kings. But that night, he spoke to his mother, Okeke Jr.'s widow, now an old woman herself. Mama, he said, these people say Grandpa was supposed to be king, that he was killed. Is it true? There was a long silence. Then his mother spoke, tears in her voice. Your father made me promise never to tell you. He was afraid they would come for you too. But yes, your grandfather was murdered. Your father always believed it was because of the throne. We ran to protect you, to give you a normal life. They want me to go back, Chinedu said, to take the throne. His mother was quiet for a moment. Then, your father died never getting justice for his father. If you can bring honor back to our family, if you can make things right, then maybe their spirits can finally rest. Dad decided it. Chinedu quit his job, packed his things, and traveled to the village he had never seen. The village his father had fled from 33 years ago. Part 23. The Confrontation. The young council of elders called for a village assembly. It was the largest gathering in decades. People came from everywhere, curious about what was happening. There had been rumors, whispers of great changes coming. Chukwudi stood before the assembled crowd and presented the evidence, the diary, the testimonies, the documents. Our fathers did a great wrong, he declared, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. They took bribes. They conspired with Silas to murder an innocent man, Okike, and steal the throne that was rightfully his. We cannot undo the past, but we can make the future right, the crowd murmured, shocked, horrified. Then Chukwudi introduced Chinedu. This is Okeke's grandson, the rightful heir. We are here today to restore justice, to right the wrongs of the past. Some people cheered, others wept. Many just stood in stunned silence. But what about King Silas? Someone called out. He is still alive, still in the palace. Today, Chukwudi said firmly, we will go to the palace. We will remove Silas from the throne. He has ruled through murder and deceit. His reign ends today. And so, on that bright morning, a procession of elders, youths and villagers marched to the palace. The palace that had once been magnificent was now a nightmare. The gates hung crooked on broken hinges. The compound was overgrown with weeds and wild grass. The walls were crumbling. Animals had made nests in corners. It looked like something from a horror story. No guard stood at the entrance. No servants moved about. The entire palace was abandoned, except for one occupant. When they entered the main quarters, the smell hit them first. The overwhelming stench of rot, decay, human waste. Several people vomited. Others covered their faces with cloth. And there, on the floor in the center of the grand room, lay King Silas. He was lying in a pool of his own urine and feces. His body was emaciated. You could see every bone. His teeth were gone. His hair was gone. His nails were gone. His skin was covered in oozing sores and peeling flesh. But his face, oh God, his face still looked young. Smooth skin stretched over a skull. It was the most horrifying thing most of them had ever seen. He was still alive. His chest rose and fell with shallow, rattling breaths. His eyes, those terrible ancient eyes, were open, aware, trapped in a body that was both young and dying. Several people screamed. Others ran out of the room. Chukwudi stepped forward, covering his nose and mouth. "Silas," he said, his voice echoing in the empty hall. "We know everything. We know you murdered Okeke. We know you bribed our fathers. We know you have committed great evil to get where you are." Silas's eyes moved to look at him. His mouth opened. A croaking sound came out. "The rightful heir has returned," Chukwudi continued. "Okeke's grandson is here to take his grandfather's throne. You are hereby stripped of your title. You will be removed from this palace today." Silas tried to speak. His voice was barely a whisper, but in the silence of that terrible room, everyone heard. "I confess." The crowd leaned in. "I killed my first wife, my children." Each word seemed to cost him everything. "Used their lives to extend mine. This is punishment. Cannot die. God help me, they cannot die." A wave of horror swept through the crowd. Some people wept. Others spat at him in disgust. "Monster! Evil! Cursed!" They brought a wooden stretcher. 4 strong men, holding their breath against the smell, lifted Silas onto it. He weighed almost nothing. His body had wasted away to skin and bones. They carried him out of the palace, through the village. People lined the streets to watch. Some threw stones, others threw dirt and leaves. Traditional ways of cursing someone. "Leave our land, evil one. May the earth reject your bones." They took him deep into the forest, to an old abandoned hut that hunters had stopped using years ago. They placed him inside on the dirt floor, and they left him there. As the villagers walked away, Silas lay in the hut, staring at the decaying ceiling. He tried to cry, but he had no tears left. He had wanted to be king, and he had been king for over 50 years. But what good was a crown to a man who couldn't die? What good was power to a man rotting in his own flesh? He had gained the whole world and lost his soul. Back at the palace, a massive cleansing ceremony took place. Traditional priests came from all over. They performed rituals to cleanse the land. They slaughtered animals, poured libations, prayed for hours to drive out the evil that had inhabited that place. They scrubbed the palace clean, burned Silas's throne and everything he had touched. Then, in a beautiful ceremony filled with joy and tears, Chinedu was crowned king. King Chinedu first, the rightful heir, the grandson of the man who should have been king all those decades ago. The entire village celebrated. Finally, justice had been served. Finally, the wrong had been righted. Chinedu proved to be a good king, a just king. He ruled with wisdom and compassion. He continued to develop the village, but with honest money, not cost wealth, and the village began to prosper in a new clean way. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Silas existed. You would think he would die within weeks, surely within months, but he didn't. He lay there, unable to move, unable to die. The pain never stopped. His flesh continued to rot and regenerate in an endless agonizing cycle. Maggots would appear and feast on him. When they were done, new flesh would grow back, and the cycle would repeat. He wanted to scream, but his voice was gone. He wanted to die, but death wouldn't come. The years crawled by with agonizing slowness. 110 years old, 120 years old. The hut was falling apart around him. The roof developed holes. Rain poured in. But Silas lay there, suffering, unable to move, unable to escape. 130 years old. Hunters who ventured too close would hear sounds, terrible sounds that didn't seem human. They would run and never return. Parents began using the hut as a warning. If you misbehave, I'll take you to the cursed forest where the evil king lives. Children would straighten up immediately. 140 years old. King Chinedu ruled wisely for 15 years, then died peacefully. His son succeeded him. Life in the village moved on, but in that hut, time stood still. Silas remained, trapped in eternal suffering, 150 years old. Silas's children from his second marriage, all dead now, of old age. Their children, Silas's grandchildren, were old themselves now. Some had already died, but Silas lived on, 160 years old. His mind began to fracture. After so many decades of isolation and pain, he started to lose his grip on reality. Sometimes he forgot his name. Sometimes he forgot what he had done, but the pain always reminded him. 170 years old. A new generation of children grew up in the village. They heard whispers about the evil king in the forest, but thought it was just a fairy tale. Some brave teenagers would dare each other to approach the hut. 175 years old. Silas's mind was mostly gone now. He existed in a haze of pain and fractured memories. Sometimes he thought he was still a boy in his father's compound. Sometimes he thought he was young Silas, serving Master Okonkwo. Sometimes he remembered Eda's smile, Chidi's laughter, Amara's tiny hand, and the regret would pierce through the madness like a knife. 180 years old. And then, on a morning like any other morning, though Silas no longer knew what day it was, what month, what year, something changed. The pain stopped. For the first time in 75 years, the burning agony that had been his constant companion stopped. Silas's eyes, those ancient suffering eyes, widened in shock. He tried to move his hand. It moved. He took a breath, a full, deep breath that didn't hurt, and he understood. 186 years, the exact number of years he had bought with his wife's life, his son's life, his daughter's life. Every single year had been spent. The debt was paid in full. Death, which had been denied to him for so long, finally came. Silas closed his eyes. His last thought was a prayer, though he had no right to pray, though he knew judgment awaited him. Eda, he whispered with his last breath. Chidi, Amara, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. And then Silas died. He looked exactly as he had looked 150 years ago. A young man of 30, but he had lived 180 years, every single one of them a punishment. 3 days passed before anyone found the body. A group of hunters, tracking a deer, noticed the usual terrible sounds from the hut had stopped. They approached cautiously and found him. The elders were called. They looked at the body, still young in appearance, but finally dead. They did not give him a royal burial, did not mourn him, did not honor him in any way. They burned the body, burned the hut, burned everything. They performed rituals to cleanse the land completely, and they made a decision. Silas's name would be struck from the official list of kings. As far as the village was concerned, after the old good king died, there was no king until Chinedu was crowned. Silas was erased from history. His reign was removed from the records. His story was told only as a warning, never as a legacy. Remember the evil king. Grandmothers would tell their grandchildren years later. Remember what happens when you want success so badly. You sacrifice anything, anyone to get it. Silas's grandchildren from his second marriage never returned to the village. When they heard he had finally died, they felt nothing, no grief, no relief, just nothing. They had long ago disowned him. His businesses had crumbled decades ago. His wealth had evaporated. His properties had fallen to ruin. His grandchildren, the last of his family, disappeared and never looked back. Everything he had built dissolved like smoke because some foundations are too evil to stand. And so the story ends with a lesson as old as time itself. Be patient. God's time is not our time, but it is always the best time. Sometimes the later truly is better than the former. Sometimes it is better to live long and eat a little chicken than to die early eating a whole cow. Because what good is a feast if you cannot digest it? What good is wealth if you cannot enjoy it? What good is a long life if every moment is torment? Silas thought 10 years of wealth was better than 50 years of poverty, but he got neither. He got 180 years of hell on earth. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you sacrifice. Be careful what deals you make in the dark, because the price is always higher than you imagine. And payment is always collected in full with interest.